Okay, everybody. So we're just going to do a quick, sort of a quick roundup here, because the code that we have works, completely works. It functions. I roll over, I roll out, right? Everything that I expect to happen happens. Yes, fantastic. Obviously, it could be prettier, like most of my work, but that's for you guys to sort out. What could also be prettier though is my code. And so I just want to talk briefly about the ways that we could sort of optimize this code. So very much as happens when we're writing, right? We start with a draft. Draft it, you get the basic organization, the building blocks, you get it so you understand what the story is, right? And then you edit. You put it down for a day or two if you have time. Hopefully you have time. I know you guys are wonderful time managers, and so I'm sure you always have lots and lots of time to put your work down and then come back to it later and when you've got a clear head. You put it down, you come back to it, you kind of tidy it up, you clean it up, you make the language a little bit nicer, you cut out extra dependent phrases, right? Rework those prepositional phrases, things like that. So we could do the same thing with code. And what I want to point out here is that even though our example works fine, totally works, but it doesn't really scale because as we've talked about before, right, we have this problem of like, well, we've hard-coded hotspot 1, which means that if we wanted to put a mouse over on hotspot 2, for example, we'd have to write all this code over again, right? Same thing with our show note and hide note. We can see that if we wanted to have, say, multiple things annotated, it would balloon our code really quickly. So I'm just going to go over a strategy. There are multiple strategies. Chris might be, I'm sure Chris could offer alternatives as well. This is how I tend to approach this problem, but there's definitely more than one way. So here's something based on the building blocks that we've already covered. So the main thing here that I can see is that on this annotate image, right, I only have one annotate image method. And so what I want to do is I am going to grab the image that we have annotated. So I'm going to say var my image, right, is just that one particular image, right? I've only got one of them for now, so I can afford to do that. And then I'm going to say, it's not, which isn't strictly necessary, but I like to be as localized as possible. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, look, I'm going to create a variable that is every hotspot, that is all the hotspots that can be found. Actually, I don't need to do it in the image at all. As long as my hotspots are all the same, I'm just going to say, give me everything that has the class hotspot attached to it, right? So what we're using now is we're seeing jQuery, right, can do two things. jQuery can find divs. It can find them by ID, which we're very familiar with, but it can also find them by class. So what this means is I can just grab everything that has a class of hotspot on it. And then what I can do is I can write a for loop that says, hey, now we know how our for loop works, I equals 0. Because actually when it does this, when jQuery grabs everything with a class of hotspot, it actually just puts them in, you guessed it, an array. So I can use that to my advantage here, and I can actually loop through that array and use it as a way to, right, I'm just going to use .length the way I would anywhere else, right, with any other list or array. And now I'm going to say, hey, for each one of those, for every element, right, I'm going to use my usual indexing. I'm going to say, go ahead and give me that element. So var my, I'm going to use hotspot, okay, is going to be, well, it's going to be hotspots index I, right? That is going to be the current hotspot, the current div, right? So I'm actually looping through a list of divs. That list of divs was generated, was located, I should say. It was located by jQuery for us when we gave it this command. So now I have the div, and I want to add the mouse over to it. So that mouse over function, right, is part of the jQuery library. So I'm going to say, okay, when I come here, my HS, right, that div element that I've got in that array, mouse over, right, and now I'm going to say show note, right, and I can do the same thing with mouse out. So I still only have the one, but we're going to see how this scales up from there. So here we go with hide note. All right, so if this works correctly, what I've done is I've just said, look, give me an array of all of the elements on the page that have the class hotspot on them, loop through them, and add show note and hide note to them as their mouse over and mouse out functions. So let's give it a gander here. That's not very promising, is it? I don't like it when things fail to load. Nope, we're waiting for Google. What you talking about, Google? This is actually a perfect example. In fact, I'm going to shortcut this process. How am I going to do that? I'm going to put my annotate image call above my load gviz call. Now, of course, that might be a problem loading jQuery at the moment, which would be unfortunate. But let's try this again. JSchool. Oof. See if my internet's working at all. Google.com. Yeah, it seems to be working. Well, this one's feeling a little sad, so let's see if we can't get a different element up here. Let's open you with Chrome. Way not feeling it. All right, I'm gonna put a pause on, come back to you in a moment. So, funny story. I thought it was weird that Google was taking so long to load, and then I realized that I had created, right? I started removing things from my code that I had accidentally created an infinite loop. See what I did here? I forgot to actually give my for loop a limit, right? See the difference? I just said hotspots.length. So it just basically said, I'm just going to increment I forever because I didn't give it an end condition. Hopefully this will go much more smoothly now. Yeah, that looks better, doesn't it? And it also looks like it works. So good things. When things start hanging inexplicably, never a bad idea to back up a couple of steps and see what might have gone wrong. Okay, so now the question is, how do we get rid of this bit that has our actual hotspot note hard-coded? Well, this little E thing, remember, E is our clap, although, of course, in this case, the clap is the rollover. So E is the sound of rollover, is the sound of the mouse over in the browser. And so we're going to ask, and that clap, that event, has some information attached to it. Among that information is essentially a reference, a link, to the thing that was rolled over. So in order to get that, I'm going to say var the target. Okay. Now I'm going to do a few things at once here. Okay. So first, what I'm doing is I'm using a JavaScript property. Right. This is raw JavaScript e.currentTarget, and what that means is, what is the thing that the person rolled over? Tell me what that div is. Hand that div back to me. And then I'm going to say, now that you've handed that div back to me, I'm going to ask you to do a jQuery, a little jQuery on it, and tell me what its ID attribute is. Okay, so all of this bit, this attribute bit, and the $signs, right? That's all jQuery. E.currentTarget. That's just plain old JavaScript, okay? So why am I doing this? Well, remember when I said that thing about convention versus configuration? We know that the name of the hotspot, of the note that goes with the hotspot, is just underscore, it's just the ID of the div that we rolled over plus underscore note. So now I'm going to go ahead and console log this, make sure that I'm getting what I think I'm getting. Okay, so hopefully when I roll over, this should... open up my console window here, inspect element, right? And if I roll over this, there we go, hotspot 1. So now how do I find the node attached to it? Well, I can just say, by the way, jQuery, I'd like you to go grab this thing for me. So I'm going to say #. Now I can use an addition sign with my strings here. And I say, oh, and by the way, just add underscore note to that. And Oh, by the way, I want you to toggle that one, right? Because the toggle feature just says turn it on and off, right? So here we go. I have done that thing. Now you may also have noticed that because of the way the toggle works, we don't actually even need separate event handlers here, right? I could just say on and off. Now I've done it this way just in case, you know, I might want to do different things on rollover and roll out, right? Maybe one's a fade out, maybe there's something else on there, right? So this shows you how to do them two separately, but actually it's basically the same thing going on in each case, right? We always just need to take the thing that was rolled over or rolled out, use it to find the note attached to it, and then toggle that. Right, reloaded here. Looks pretty good, right? So the real test is going to be what happens if I add another hotspot? What happens if I add another note? So I'm just going to go ahead and try that. See how we do here. So again, convention over configuration, hotspot 1, hotspot 2, now hotspot 2, hotspot 2 note. This is my, oops, don't want to do that. This is my second annotation. I can totally spell. Okay, bring this back over. Now I haven't put any specific positioning on those, so you know, it's probably going to show up somewhere down here. We leave that as an exercise for the reader. Right? No extra code, still working weirdly because it's relatively positioned. Kind of regretting that choice now. But you see how this works? So anyway, that was just to address this. Now obviously even this hard coding we could factor out, right? So again, if we start to say, well gee, maybe we need 5 elements, then we could actually start to generate those with JavaScript, maybe even off of a separate JSON file. So in any given situation, you're going to need to make an assessment about what's the most efficient use of your time. Feel free to start with a draft, right? To start with a little bit of hard coding. And then if you have time to go back to it, it's a really great idea to refactor because this means that the code base will be more flexible for you going forward, right? That's kind of a theme we've tried to have this semester, is that we sort of start out getting things to work one way, and then we kind of build on them and refine the methods that we're using so that we can use them with, you know, more things more easily and really not have to go back and write a lot of stuff from scratch unless it's absolutely necessary. So that is all for now. I will see you guys on Thursday with a responsive grid exercise. Cheers.